We'd be in the North Willamette Valley. The AVA that Alloro is located in is the Chehalem Mountains. So we are on a ridge called Laurel Ridge. That is the east flank of the Chehalem Mountains. We faced west. So we're on the west side of that ridge. And so we're on, again, it'd be the north end of Willamette Valley. Probably the nearest, closest town would be Newburgh to the south, about 4 miles, and Sherwood to the west, about 4 miles. Alloro is Laurel for Italian, and we're on Laurel Ridge, and our soil series is Laurel Wood. So Pinot Noir being all about place. So Alloro just kind of clicked in with my Italian heritage on my mom's side. I thought, that kind of sounds nice, Alloro. So that's where the name came from. Chehalem is an Indian word, and I'm not going to speculate on the translation because I've heard many different translations. But it's an Indian word for these hills. So Chehalem Mountains, hence the name of the AVA, and it's the largest AVA in the state. Pretty fairly good size. It goes from Newburgh all the way into Washington County, just probably south of Beaverton, and even over towards Forest, just this side of the Banks areas, not Banks, excuse me. I guess it'd be Gaston, excuse me. So fairly good size AVA. That's a great question. Early on when I was looking for a vineyard site, I'd worked with a realtor who specialized in acquiring vineyard ground, and I'd worked with some consultants so we could do some soil tests to analyze the soil series and make the decision if the site is appropriate. And we looked around the valley, and we've been looking at different sites. And when I came upon this site, I thought this looks really good. And we had done a test. I had called the owner. Actually, it wasn't for sale. The owner lived in Shasta, California. And I'd called him and said, I'd like to make an offer on the property. And he said, I'd like to do dig some test pits. He said, sure, go right ahead. So we did that. Turned out to be a Class A site. So after some haggling back and forth, we were able to buy the site. So I was very excited about that. It was a 40-acre piece originally, and that was in 1999. That's when we planted our first 20 acres of grapes. Since that time, this contiguous piece of property has grown to 110 acres. And we have 33 acres of grapes planted now. Yeah, born and raised. Grew up about 8 miles from here.
Oh, no. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's got to be pretty neat for you.
Yeah. It's nice to have family in the area.
Oh, yeah. That's huge, especially when it comes to harvest.
Yeah. Yes. It's funny you said that because early on when I learned how to, I was self-taught how to grow wine grapes. I didn't necessarily go to agricultural school. I was a business major, finance major. So as you're learning to grow and then the first harvest comes on and you get family and friends to help with the harvest, and I learned very quickly that I had to bring professionals in because it's quite a job during harvest, and learning to manage that, instead of me being out there with the crew picking, I had to actually manage the process. And after the first harvest, I learned very quickly that we needed to step our game up. And of course the first harvest was a small harvest, but I'm glad it wasn't a big one because there's a lot of moving parts during harvest. It was actually, and even to this day, I still have family members that help during harvest, but it was fun. I mean, there's a lot of, it's a lot of hard work. I'm not going to romanticize the amount of work that goes into running an agricultural operation like a vineyard, but there is a lot of camaraderie and lifestyle involved. I mean, we always share a nice big lunch together, and it's kind of exciting to see the fruit come in after a year of work and then to see the harvest. It's always an exciting time. I was making homemade wine in my garage, and from that experience, I realized that how challenging Pinot Noir was to make, and so I hired a professional winemaker. I focused on the farming, and our first winemaker was here till 2009, and Tom Fitzpatrick, our current winemaker, came on board for the 2010 harvest and has been here ever since. And Tom is a wonderful guy, and there's always the chemistry of how we get along, he and his wife, and our families get along wonderful, but also the vision of what we want Alloro wine to be and what we want this site to represent. So it's a really good. We have a very good team, and it's really made for, I think, the success of Alloro. I think that collaboration between myself as a grower, Tom as the winemaker, the walks in the vineyard, talking about the decisions, the multiple decisions we're going to make during the growing season to bring out the best in that vintage. it's a dynamic process. Every year's different. You have weather, you have early heat, late heat, cool weather. There's all those decisions. How are you going to make those decisions in the vineyard? That, again, all those little decisions along the way, in the end, manifest themselves in the wine. And then Tom, with his skills as a winemaker and his experience, taking those grapes and then bringing that fruit to its full potential. It's an exciting process, and it changes every year. Every time it changes, it's going to be something we're going to do slightly different. And I think that's what makes it so fascinating. It's a lifelong learning process.